It's not only about the bragging rights, it's about representation, prowess, flexibility, and adequate information for a solution-focused initiative. We crowned a champion in the 3rd edition of the Speak and Solve initiative, SASI. It was a tough challenge, but an ultimate winner emerged. Taking the trophy, which has been in the custody of the Harare Institute of Technology, the Midland State University held the cup for the first time, marking themselves as the team to beat in the 4th edition of the SASI debate. They fought a good fight. Will they follow in the footsteps of their predecessors and be the winners this year? Do they have what it takes to take it home yet again?
Hello, viewers, listeners, and participants of the 2021 National Universities Debate Competition. The Swedish Embassy here in Zimbabwe is committed to increase access to and respect for sexual and reproductive health and rights, especially for young people. Sweden has a long history of prioritizing these rights as part of its health, gender, human rights, and sustainable development work. And we place great importance on working with partners in countries across the world. To increase reach to young people in Zimbabwe, we have partnered up with Say What for an Action for Choice project, a project that is working hard to expand the knowledge and the attitudes of students in Zimbabwe so that they can successfully learn, function, and participate in the broader global community. We believe that when students' sexual and reproductive health choices are broadened, there is increased potential for them to excel in other development facets such as education, professional careers, employability. I would like to commend Say What for doing this important work. It is against this background that I welcome you all to the 2021 National Universities Debate Competition, which has been branded the Speak and Solve initiative. This year's competition, which is in its 4th edition, is taking place in the new studio, which was established with funding from the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. The state-of-the-art studio is coming at a time when the world is adjusting to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic by pursuing digital means of reaching out to young people. It is my hope that Say What will utilize this studio to harness untapped young people's talents across the country in generating and dissemination quality on sexual health and rights information. At this point, allow me to declare the Say What studio officially open. May this day mark the beginning of a new era in SRHR digital programming for young people in Zimbabwe. To all 2021 debaters, take advantage of this year's competition to employ your critical thinking and public speaking skills in creating and communicating solutions to young people's SRHR and emerging humanitarian problems. This is your chance to shine and make your contributions to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. To all viewers, listeners, and participants, I must say that beyond enjoying the competition, please take a moment to reflect on what you will learn and have learned throughout this process and how you can use that to make yourself and those around you better. Thank you all for joining this broadcast and lending your voices and visions to the debate. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Courtney Tediwana Shijongwe.
And I'm Nelson Banda. We are Team MSUAS.
Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences. I feel very excited to be a part of this team, very honored as well, because Nelson and I make a very powerful team. The other team should be very excited to meet us as well.
Well, I feel very confident about this team.
Not only do I think that we stand a chance, I know that we stand a chance. you should expect greater and more amazing results this time around, because this time we are more stronger, powerful and readier than we were before.
I expect to take the trophy home this time around, given the last year's experience. We do stand a chance. Like last time we did better, and this time around I think we're going to do better again. Team MSUAS, sizzling fire, watch out!
All right, so we're down to the final pair in this round. And after they're done, we're going to the semifinals. It's down to the wire. So I'm not going to keep us going for too long. Guys, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling great.
Feeling good? Yeah. I'm not. I'm worried. How are you feeling?
We're feeling very excited.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Excited. You clearly are confident of yourselves. Good luck. And hopefully we see you guys in the next stage. All right, so our motion is, currently, Zimbabwean law defines rape as a crime of having vaginal or anal intercourse with a female without her consent. This House would legally define rape as sex without explicit consent. I'm going to read it out again. Currently, Zimbabwean law defines rape as a crime of having vaginal or anal intercourse with a female without her consent. This House would legally define rape as sex without explicit consent. Are we clear on our motion? All right, I'm going to go through our modalities once again because we have lost some time off our clock. All right? Just making it a bit more difficult for you. All right, so affirmative, your opening speech is now 3 minutes. After which, opposers, you have 1 minute to cross-examine your opponents, all right? Once you're done with your cross-examination, it is your turn to give your opening speech, and it will be 3 minutes, all right? Then you will also get 1 minute to cross-examine. Once we're done with that, we move to rebuttal stage, where opposers, you will begin, and you have 3 minutes for that, all right? Then team affirmative, you also get 3 minutes, okay? When we're done with that, we get our closing remarks, starting with the opposers, ending with the affirmative, and that is now 2 minutes on each clock. Are we clear on our modalities? All right. Are you ready with your opening?
Yeah.
Your clock starts now.
The minority of one generation is usually the majority of the next generation. What I'm trying to say is individual human rights should not be subjected to a public vote, ladies and gentlemen. The spirit behind this motion is inclusivity and equality. First of all, our client is a man who was sexually abused by Zimbabwean women for ritual purposes, reported by the BBC News on 28 November 2011. Took more than a year for them to be arrested. And when they finally appeared in court, the three women, they were charged with aggravated indecent assault, ladies and gentlemen. Indecent! They were charged against their decency. And we are here to say no. As long as it's violation of the sexual anatomy, it should be defined as rape. There was no explicit consent. Now, what is explicit consent? It is when an individual is clearly presented with an option to agree or to disagree, to be or not to be in the act, ladies and gentlemen, and there was nothing like that whatsoever. The background information does not include sex between a male and a male. It only talks of the female, and we are here to say it should include as such by just saying rape is when there is sex without explicit consent. There are also other methods that can violate a sexual anatomy of a male. That includes use of objects. There is also oral sex, which is not included in the section 65, which we managed to get our background information, ladies and gentlemen. Even the international law is adopted by some countries such as Yugoslavia. It characterized this rape without explaining and discriminating. Even the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, it held or states, according to the African Union's guidelines on combating the sexual violence and consequences in Africa, and therefore we should penalize the violation of individuals' sexual anatomy. The Constitution itself, ladies and gentlemen, it guarantees the right to freedom, the right to equality on Section 56, guarantees the right to freedom, the freedom from torture, inhuman, that is on Section 53. And then Section 56, it excludes the non-consensual oral sex, which we are here to say, ladies and gentlemen, and to redefine a rape as a house. Even Onward Gibson, in his opening remarks at the She Decides movement, he said, and I open quote, "Sweet music is only possible when both keys are played together. Even equality is only possible when we come together." And I close quote, ladies and gentlemen. Let us not mischaracterize crime. Thank you so much.
All right, with 2 seconds of passion left. Are you ready with your cross-examination?
Yes, I am ready.
Oh.
Okay.
Shit,
Sorry.
Yeah, you're so ready, you're going. Your clock starts now.
Thank you. Okay, so the current definition of rape by law makes it illegal to sleep with a minor, and if you do so, you go to jail because the minor cannot consent. My question really is, what part of consent are you not comfortable with in the previously existing definition of rape?
Sorry, I did not get your question right, but if I heard right, you somehow mentioned another section of the Constitution, yet today we are debating Section 65, which just defines rape as it is with no...
That was not the question. That was not the question. That was background to the question. And the question is, and I'll repeat, what exactly do you feel is not clear enough with the consent that is mentioned in the previously existing definition of rape?
It is not inclusive of all types of rape, that is man to man, the use of objects on penetration.
Thank you.
I really wish you had gone more into those examples. I'm just saying. But, all right, are you ready with your opening?
Yes.
All right, please turn the mic towards you. Okay, and your clock starts now.
Okay, so as ours, we are going to zero in on the most important and sensitive part in this debate, and that is explicit consent. So panel, these guys have just defined explicit consent, but let me characterize explicit consent to you. Explicitness is achieved when a boy and a girl sit down and say, "I want to have sex. What do you think?" And then she has to say, "No problem." It means that for husband and wife, before indulging into sex, they have to ask each other, "Are you okay with this?" And then if they say yes, then they go for it. So where is the problem in that? The problem is that the kind of consent that is explicit consent is close to impossible to get, especially in an environment like the third world conservative countries like ours, where we have girls with reservations, girls who actually think that the moment they say yes to explicitly, they are labeled as loose. So we have got people who cannot openly express themselves. They are just too shy to give explicit consent. They want to, but they can't. They can't say it. So when a guy touches her, she touches him back. When he removes the clothes, she removes his. So we have to understand that there are people who are just like that. So it means then that everyone is gonna rape. If we redefine rape as sex without explicit consent, which is very absurd. The point is, if we legally define rape as sex without explicit consent instead of the current definition in Zimbabwe, it means every man and woman is a potential criminal walking, is a rapist. So, panel, I would like to allude to this. The beauty of sex lies in spontaneity, the quality of being spontaneous. I can again say that good sex is often random and spontaneous. So, to require explicit consent before sex makes it a mechanical activity that needs a code, that needs planning, an activity that needs planning. So, for someone to then ask that, "Can we have sex tomorrow?" And when tomorrow comes, and then to say, before doing it, "Are you still on again?" So, panel, the point is, this is just absurd. Good sex happens randomly. Therefore, defining rape as sex without explicit consent means that we rob sex of its beauty, the pleasure, and that leads to another problem of dissatisfaction, and that is a catalyst for promiscuity. Panel, we are not necessarily against consent. We're not necessarily saying that there shouldn't be consent, but to require or to make explicit consent, that means we have to call for a Versailles Treaty for a Berlin conference each time we need to have sex. I mean, we would then have to sit on a table and sign papers on whether we are going to have sex or not. The question is, how practical is that? It's not even practical. So this house would dismiss the other house's definition of rape and maintain the status quo.
Sorry, even I got caught up in our resident expert on good sex, ladies and gentlemen. No, I'm joking.
No, it's fine.
Are you ready with your cross-examination?
Yes.
All right, your clock starts now.
Mr. Speaker, sir, please account for the fact that your argument goes against the UN values of equality and dignity.
Okay, can you repeat the question again?
Mr. Speaker, sir, please account for the fact that your argument goes against the UN values of the right to equality and the right to freedom of expression.
We are never against the right to freedom of expression. We have no problem with consenting. We have no problem with the right to consent. We are against explicitness in the consent.
Mr. Speaker, sir, how do you account for the fact that the current law does not excludes the LGBTQ society, of which this is something that we are pushing for right now because we want them to be included since they are also human and therefore should exercise their rights?
Okay, we don't see in any way how this law is excluding the LGBT community, because this law is just for everyone.
Thank you.
All right, opposers, are you ready with your rebuttal?
Yes.
All right, your clock starts now.
In my first question, I asked what the problem was with the consent in the previously existing definition. And your answer was, it's not inclusive of all types of rape. And that is not the question that we're trying to address today. Today we are addressing the problem with consent. Are we consenting or we are sticking to explicit consent? And this house stands to go against explicit consent because explicit consent is actually impractical, and this is why. We agree, and this is why. The essence of crime of rape is the element of lack of consent. We agree that there is need to have consent. Consent being permission for something to happen or an agreement to do something. In context, this something is sexual intercourse. However, the issue is the practicality of the explicit consent. We are challenging the motion. We are challenging the idea that explicit consent we are challenging the idea of explicit consent that the other side of the house is advocating for. It is hypothetical. It is more hypothetical than it is actually practical. It implies that an agreement has to be orally given or written down, and we are saying that that is not always applicable because 70 to 93% of all communication is actually non-verbal. This percentage is way too high for us to rely on the competence of explicit consent. We cannot rely fully on spoken word because research actually showed that 90% of females are comfortable with giving consent implicitly. And that is high enough for us to dismiss the idea of explicit consent. Secondly, I gather that you defined explicit consent, and this house does not feel that the other side of the house actually comprehend what explicit consent actually is. So, how can they possibly understand the implications of redefining rape to sex without explicit consent when they don't even know what explicit consent actually entails? Explicit consent actually entails that an individual is clearly presented with an option to agree or disagree in context when both parties fully agree to sex verbally or writing first before indulging. My partner previously characterized the procedure, and honestly, that just sounds like a business deal. I mean, if we do this, we are actually robbing the natural process of the beauty that comes with spontaneity. It must be an act that is carried out in the heat of the moment, not some business deal where terms and conditions should be set out before further ado. Therefore, it stands that the new law is rather hypothetical. It's actually more hypothetical than it is practical, and it's also more hypothetical than it's actually applicable. Therefore, enacting this new law implies that everyone is a potential criminal. Everyone then becomes a potential rapist. Thank you.
All right, with 4 seconds to go. Team Affirmative, are you ready with your rebuttal?
Yes.
Your clock starts now.
Ladies and gentlemen, communication is vital. And yes, communication is practical. We are even communicating right now. Now, the opposers, ladies and gentlemen, had actually the audacity to join our side by agreeing that there should be verbally done communication before sex. They also asked us a question, ladies and gentlemen, that today we are talking about consent. Yes, but who consents? LGBTQ society consents, straight society consents, the queer society consents, everybody should consent. And yes, that means that today's debate, the spirit behind the motion of today, is also upon equality and inclusivity, ladies and gentlemen. Now that leads us to our own debate today. Ladies and gentlemen, these cases are real, the evidence is substantive, and you should know that as a house, we would refine the law as such in order to promote sexual orientation independence. This would then reduce sexual violence, violations of body autonomy, and loss of dignity. We are saying that, ladies and gentlemen, the law needs to be revised and amended. It recognizes same-sex relations but fails to account for long-term unprecedented circumstances, for example, rape in the case of 2 males. The Tunisian Act 203 actually reiterates same-sex relations as sodomy. So how then will gay people be able to report sex? They will not. They would rather suffer in silence, and the effects are devastating. Depression, trauma, even murder in self-defense, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, it is a forgotten society that should be remembered by the long hand of the government. Now moving on, we are saying that let's talk about the human rights to equality. Sexual minority rights are human rights. Yes, we say majority rules, but are the minority not a people? Should they then be misrepresented? Think about social justice, ladies and gentlemen. We are saying that livelihoods have been decimated, accredited to misrepresentation of the law. There is an indicated increase in structural violence and quid pro quo, whereby our victims are abused because the perpetrators know that they won't be able to report because the law does not pledge security in their cases, ladies and gentlemen. Can we think about this society? Now, as a house, we would push for a holistic approach to dealing with rape cases. The current status quo is limited to vaginal and anal and biased towards females, but we are saying that it forgoes and oversteps forced oral sex, forced penetration by use of objects, even forced penetration using fingers, of which should be accounted for, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, we should propose for a definition of rape case that includes the forms of sex and the forms of sexual orientation, which is our case, ladies and gentlemen. There are flaws in available data reiterating reports of sexual harassment because some of these cases are not reported. Cases of forced oral sex are not reported, so there are flaws in the information, and this should be corrected, and that is our stance, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, with 3 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Are you okay?
I'm good.
You got yourself together?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to cry for a minute. Okay, I love it. Right, we are moving on from rebuttal to closing remarks. Opposers, are you good with your time?
Yes.
Let's go.
So, panel, human beings are versatile beings. We communicate in several ways. We don't just communicate by writing, we communicate even by showing feelings, even by smiling. Okay, so the other house has lost it. The other house is talking about other countries and they're forgetting that we are correcting, or rather they're seeking to correct the law on the definition of rape in Zimbabwe. Fine with that. Okay, so the other house has defined explicit consent, but it failed to deliver or at least understand what it entails. We have done that. Okay, they've barely gave a remarkable distinction between explicit consent and the consent already established in the current state of affairs, that is in the current definition of rape as stated by the law. So the question is how much more clear do you want consent to be? Because as far as the current definition is concerned, it is, for example, clear that if one sleeps with a minor, he goes to jail. The age of consent enacted in the current law is clear. So how much more clarity does the other house want from the consent in the current definition? Panel, take for example the case of a married couple. What the guys in the other house, what will the other guys in the house do with them? Because already by virtue of being married, you are in agreement that you are going to have sex.
Defining rape as sex without explicit consent is just uncalled for. A husband and wife will then have to carry a breathalyzer to the bedroom each time they want to have sex and say, dear, blow on this breathalyzer. We want to test whether you're intoxicated, because if you're intoxicated, you cannot give consent, you cannot give explicit consent, and that is just absurd. So, panel, another problem that these guys have failed to failed to see is that there are going to be girls who will say after sex, give me money. If you don't, I will report you to the police without, boss, you have raped me without explicit consent. Okay.
All right. Team Affirmative, let's have your closing remarks, and your clock starts now.
The jury. What we are simply saying is, when our client get to the courtroom, we don't want it to be called sodomy. For our client has never been to Gomorrah. It is rape, ladies and gentlemen. For we clearly defined what the motion that we are debating today. The background information is an extraction of a rape definition from Section 65 of the Zimbabwean Constitution. It's a rape definition, ladies and gentlemen, from Section 65. Now, we managed to give the spirit of the motion in this debate, which is inclusivity and equality. We also managed to define our motion and explicit consent, as they are saying. We identify the problem that is in the society, as my partner alluded to in her points. This is a speak and solve initiative debate, ladies and gentlemen. And we also give the solution, which is the motion we are proposing today. We moved on further to mention the international law, which was adopted by an example, Yugoslavia. And therefore, this house is saying we can also adopt it. Not that we've based our argument on what Yugoslavia is doing. We are saying, as a country, as Zimbabwe, we can also do it because Yugoslavia managed to do it. We managed to mention some of the movements that are pushing for this motion. Where I mentioned CEDAW, ladies and gentlemen. We have said almost everything that makes us to win this debate, except for assumptions. We've only left assumptions, ladies and gentlemen. We should include all, the law should include all, justice should be for all. When you give consent, you should make sure that you give consent and the law is there to cover you. Thank you.
Also with 3 seconds to go. All right, so that is the end of this round. Whew, what a day it's been. It has been very emotional. It has been very spirited, very passionate day of debating between teams. Of course, as I did mention, this is the last pair in this round. When we then come back tomorrow, we will be in the semi-final stage. Now, he left out assumptions. You're allowed to assume, though. You can make your assumptions in the comments section. Who do you assume will be going on to? No, that's not the correct use of it. Don't worry about that. But you're allowed to speculate. You are allowed to speculate. You're allowed to cheer your teams on. Please make sure you're letting us know who you want to see in the semi-final stage. The adjudicators are shaking their heads because they're tired. They're tired. They've had a really long day, but they've been doing a really good job so far. Now, the SASI, which of course, as he alluded to, is the Speak and Solve initiative. SASI debate competition is brought to you proudly by Say What, in partnership with the Swedish Embassy, UNFPA, the National AIDS Council, and of course, Econet.
So we continue to talk about the SASI debates, very, very exciting, and thank you for joining us. Dean Chinhoyi with the Chinhoyi University of Technology, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you know that you have different point of views and would want to find out about the preparation behind the scenes. How do you prepare your students for such debates?
We prepare them thoroughly, basically not particularly for the debates, but the topic itself, sexual reproductive issues, are live issues which we are seized with as a university. So we do have peer educators who always talk about sexual reproductive health. So it's a matter of just picking amongst the pool, because they now already have the content in terms of sexual reproductive health. So from our pool, we then pick those who come and participate.
Now, how have students participated? What has been their attitude towards sexual reproductive discussions in the institution?
Now it is now a well understood concept. Initially, the issues of condom, the issues of morning after, drawn from our cultural background, it used to be a problem. Now it is an issue which they are now taking probably as a right to say if they maybe go to a clinic, they demand their space because they've been empowered with knowledge, and thanks to organizations like Say What, they now have informed the students their rights to claim their space in terms of sexual reproductive health.
And it is very, very important. Thank you so much for joining us, Dean.
I thank you.
Dean Sengarai with the Chinhoyi University of Technology, and obviously open conversations that we must have about sexual reproductive health.
Bakumana wo buwe chanskana dakari zagitari chantantara akanditari zandakak dafara kusaidi kwangu chakakala. Yo, but you should know your status and get tasted. Maizia Anduru tine mazimari mazi banduru saka iwe unonzani panika game gando dandi kuze get tested for HIV.
Thank you very much for the spirited second round. And I now have the results for the teams that are proceeding to the next round. In no particular order, Lupane State University, Midland State University, UZ, Chinhoyi University, Manicaland State University, and finally, the National University of Science and Technology. Congratulations to all the teams that have made it to round 3. Best of luck.
There's so much excitement, and thank you so much for joining us. So yesterday, we said goodbye to teams, and of course the tertiary institutions with young people who are excited, who are knowledgeable, and also representing their institutions well. So we said goodbye to Bindura University, Africa University, Gwanda State University, and also we said goodbye to Great Zimbabwe University. So it's time for us to get into the third round, and we want to know which teams are going to be going against each other. So I've got my two representatives from Say What. Let's go ahead. NUST, National University of Science and Technology, going against?
Midland State University.
Oh, that's going to be very exciting. So NUST versus MSU. And let's continue. And we are going to look at the next teams that are going against each other.
Okay, it's University of Zimbabwe.
UZ, University of Zimbabwe.
It's going against Manicaland State University.
Very exciting. This is what's happening here at the SASI debates, and thank you so much for being a part of it. And if your team is going to win, well, you know what? That'll put a smile on your face. But obviously, we want to hear from the young minds. We want to hear what they have to say. And of course, their standpoints on different subject matters. Stay with us. Cut, Chinhoyi University of Technology.
Against Lupane State University.
And I know you've been waiting for that. I know you've been waiting for that. So Mashonaland West are going against the Matabeleland North. And it's always exciting to then know which teams are going against each other. And of course, I know that the young ones are ready. The students want to go at it. And of course, it's going to be a very, very exciting round. And so stay tuned, and we want to know more from you. So in our comment section, would like to get your responses.
Fonera, say what goes center. Say what goes center, mamio. Fonera, say what goes center. Fonera, say what goes center, mamio. You know what's your mention, they give it go. But don't have to find my son. Fonera, Pona, Sunday. I don't know to find my son.
Confidential communication, you are guaranteed. Instant provisional and expert. Whoa, online counseling services. Saka phona. Waneteka neiko iwe phona. Rusiwo rese utano wepabone.
Spreading the peace, spreading the love, we're saying the gender is violence. Connecting the youth, spreading awareness, so I'm a goat and we're for life. Cause why, Taliban nani high, we're talking peace, no GBV, me the jungle, quit tonight. We got you covered, supporting girl, we're for life. We got the L, we got the P, kushiga ku NCC, and I change your lifestyle. I'm pending the compass, I'm talking about peace, connecting the youth, mugote and we're for life. Say what? Abstain, no compromise. No tolerance to GBV, to Gadaru, to Batabasa.